Every day, more and more people wake up to the simple truth that Bethesda is shit. What? What did you think I'm gonna talk about? I'm a good boy. I don't talk about anything strange here on this channel. And every month, it seems like at this point, we have new insider leakers telling us how bad the situation at Bethesda is, how corporately oversaturated the company is, how absolutely toxic positivity has destroyed everything. Once people loved about this, how Todd Howard has lost sight of literally reality, and Emil Paglarino role plays as Batman in the night. Yeah, that's the last one I made up, but I mean, how far are we from that?
The world is waiting with bated breath for Bethesda Game Studios' next mainline entry, next big project, which is
I'm pretty sure most people are very much not actually interested in what Bethesda is cooking with Elder Scrolls 6.
going to be Elder Scrolls 6. But until then, a lot of people are wondering what's going on behind the scenes at Bethesda, given the various mishaps and missteps we've seen from this studio, which was once upon a time renowned. Lately, their reputation has been hit or miss, with Fallout 4 not having garnered the immensely positive reception that, I think Bethesda was hoping for. There's some mixed feelings on that game despite its merit.
What mixed feelings? Wait, what meta are we talking about again, Yongi?
And then Fallout 76, obviously, while it's doing a lot better now, also just the design.
Again, Yong yaps about anything that's popular, even though if he hasn't played it. I played Fallout 76. Now, granted, not the Burning Springs thing, but I did try to play it less than a year ago, I think. And I think I didn't last even 2 hours. The experience was just that fucking bad. The gunplay was unbearably bad. The NPCs, the Scorch literally still try to go to you in melee range. Like, there's nothing good about the game. Anyone who says that 76 is doing better or is better is just lying to you, or they have no idea what's happening.
Disastrous launch, and it took a while for that game to kind of stabilize. And then Starfield is an entry that I think was very ambitious, but a lot of people are perceiving its launch to ultimately be disappointing, and it's a game that ultimately couldn't live up to.
Man, hot takes, Young, hot takes. You can tell that he's afraid to receive any backlash because he's talking about Bethesda, a beloved company. Yeah, Young has not figured out the fact that most people, most Bethesda fans don't exist any longer.
The ambitions that it presented or provide the fun factor and the kind of trademark exploration and level of like handcraftedness that past Bethesda entries had. And so there are questions as to what the future holds for Bethesda and whether they can capture that magic that they really once upon a time used to have with Elder Scrolls 6. But until then, it's good to get some insight into some behind-the-scenes goings-ons and realities. And that's where developers recently kind of speaking out about their experience at Bethesda and working with folks like Todd Howard and whatnot comes in. And I want to present some of the developers' takes that we have been hearing over the last few weeks and months. Starting with this individual right here who spoke to Kiwi Talks. His name is Denise Megilone. I'm just going to butcher that, so I'm not even going to try. But he's a character artist on Skyrim.
Oh, we know this. I actually remember watching this. Is he going to go over all of the stuff?
Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and Starfield. Former developer who used to work at Bethesda and has since come out to kind of talk about what he thinks about Todd Howard in particular. You can see right here, this was a video that came out a year ago, back in January of 2025, but it's only now that headlines are reporting on this. A lot of people missed out on this interview and this specific bit that kind of gave us some insight into behind the scenes. And he had something to say that I think does highlight a potential problem that might have long-term ramifications. On Kiwi Talk's Twitter page, you'll find the following post of a clip that highlights Denise's take on Todd Howard. And, he really looks up to Todd and believes him to be a really good person with a lot of great design sensibilities. But at the same time, because of how big Bethesda Game Studios has become, because of the scale of this development studio now, and also because Todd Howard himself has become a bit of like a celebrity developer, what that means is that he doesn't always necessarily get the most honest feedback. So here is what Denise had to say on that front. And I think it's very telling and it's important to know.
He's a phenomenal person. And is he perfect? No. Does he call all the shots perfectly? No. I can't tell you how many times I told Todd, man, that's not a good idea. That's bad. That's not good. Or that I've kind of kept my mouth shut. I'm like, ooh, I don't think that's so great, Typically, though, I would communicate if I felt really strongly about it. Me and Todd at least could communicate on that. Was, a lot of people were afraid to say no to Todd, and I think that hurt him because a lot of people were afraid to say no to Todd. There's a number of things that, it's like George Lucas.
Yeah.
George Lucas, I think George Lucas is a genius. I think geniuses come up with terrible ideas too. They're not all going to be hits, but if you don't.
What the hell? What? I mean, George Lucas made Star Wars, true, big, and real, okay? But at the end of the day, I mean, thank you for your contributions, George. We'll take it from here, but hopefully not through Disney, okay? That's where we're kind of at.
Have somebody to help you filter through these things and give you an honest assessment because they're afraid to tell you what they really think, it actually does hurt you. So, and I think that kind of, happens to Todd a little bit in some regards.
So I think that right there is some really interesting.
Oh, yeah. In business, if you are in a high position, chances are you're a yes man. Because the person who is constantly being like, oh, boss, I don't think you have a good idea, boss. You can't do that. That's stupid. Gets fired really fast. It is what it is. There's a reason yes men get fired. And you know who gets even farther? The people who are able to say no, but in a way that people don't understand it's no. That's even more valuable.
Interesting insight, and perhaps even something that shouldn't come as much of a surprise, as Bethesda Game Studios itself achieved a certain level of pedigree in the games industry, and in turn, as Todd Howard himself rose to stardom as a developer, you get people who think Todd Howard either can do no wrong or are afraid to tell Todd Howard that they're wrong because of the legendary status that he has achieved, who has become such a big entity in the games industry that
Todd Howard at this point is a meme. Okay? We're not blind. We're not stupid. I know the access media and people like Young don't understand this, but we have brains. We're not your typical slop consumer. Okay? Now, granted, every one of us enjoys slop here and there. It is what it is. That's just a part of life. But we're not stupid. If Todd starts effing up constantly, we're not going to support him. It's that easy. And real life has shown this to be exactly the way things go. Todd could do no wrong, indeed. Now, good luck finding someone who's gonna say Todd's not a hack. Before Starfield, anything negative about Bethesda or Todd Howard received major backlash and criticism online. There were literally thousands of fanboys seemingly literally just sitting there and waiting for a negative video calling Fallout 3's ending ass, which it is, obviously. Fallout 4 is better than Fallout 3. Fight me. And now these people are gone. Before Starfield, any negative video about it received 50% dislike. Then it released and then it received only 20% dislikes. And now there's pretty much no one who's gonna unironically say Starfield's good, Todd Howard is smart. These people don't exist any longer because you can't fail this much, this hard. Take no accountability for it. In fact, blame us, the consumers. Because remember, when Starfield happened, Todd took no responsibility. He blamed everything on us. We were the bad guys. We were too stupid to understand his grand vision. We were too stupid to play the game correctly. We were too stupid for not having fun. Yeah, good luck, Todd. How far did that get you? Look at the situation now. True Bethesda fans? Like, tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. Please tell me. How many of you want Elder Scrolls 6 at this point? If you have to choose between not having Elder Scrolls 6 and delaying it like 2 or 3 years, and it gets made by non-Bethesda, or you get Elder Scrolls, but it's made by Bethesda, what do you choose? People will choose to not even have the game because everyone knows it's going to be a disappointment. Everyone knows that whatever Todd makes, Elder Scrolls 6 at this point, it's done, it's dusted, it's dead on arrival. Everyone knows it's gonna be ass. Like, the small things that we know about Elder Scrolls 6, the fact that it's Hammerfell. Hammerfell! The Black Place! By the way, Hammerfell is a great location. It has a lot of very interesting things about it. But that's not why Todd wants it to be Hammerfell. Todd wants it to be Hammerfell because then he has an excuse to make everyone black. And that's not good story writing. So people don't expect anything from Bethesda at this point. It's just really that bad.
Gives Todd Howard a lot of power and a lot of say and a lot of leeway, more freedom to have final say on everything, allows more of the trust to be placed on him. But with that comes the potential consequence of someone who achieves a status where they have to make all of the decisions, and very few people feel like they have the experience or status even to be able to say no to him or to tell him, hey, Todd, all due respect, that idea, I don't think it's a good one. And I think bringing up George Lucas is a fantastic example where, he is a genius. He came up with the whole Star Wars universe, but in the earlier days when, he was still proving himself, there was room to say no to him because at that point in time, he wasn't put up on a pedestal. The stardom and power that brings allows one to more confidently make decisions. But with that also comes the confidence to also make the wrong decisions without having people
Mad Young is going deep today, holy.
who have the either courage or feel like they're in a place to be able to tell you, hey, maybe don't do that because you're seen as like the guy who created this or the person who led that. You're like a celebrity who's like created and, led legendary releases. And so who am I to tell this person that I feel kind of iffy about that decision? Obviously, I don't have the personal experience to say whether Todd Howard is someone who does listen to feedback even from the ground floor developers, or if he's someone who's very stubborn about his own vision. But no matter which way he swings, the fact remains that...
Gee, I wonder which one is it. The guy who called everyone idiots because they didn't like what he made? Is he stubborn? About his vision? Man, I really wonder.
The people around Todd, because of how high of a pedestal he's at now, they don't feel worthy of telling him no. Another former Bethesda developer who I want to talk about, who also recently spoke out about their time working at Bethesda, is Kurt Coleman. He is the longtime Elder Scrolls lore master who left Bethesda back in 2023 after more than 20 years working at Bethesda. Back in January of 2026, he spoke to news outlet PC Gamer, and the headline of this interview reads, Bethesda's former Elder Scrolls lore master on why he left, Starfield's communication breakdowns, and how he wanted the Elder Scrolls 6 to be The Empire Strikes Back. A lot of interesting insight here, but the main thing that I want to cover is his perception on how things played out behind the scenes when it comes to like working with someone like Todd Howard, and discussed how in the early days it was a close group of developers, including Todd Howard, in a basement office who were bouncing ideas off of each other, eating in the canteen together, and making decisions.
Wait, is this... No, it's a new video. It's a new video. I swear I have heard Young yap this before. I swear.
Together. This was back when Bethesda Game Studios wasn't this massive organization with hundreds of employees and developers, but rather a small group of people who were constantly in communication with each other, who could always check in with each other, And it wasn't this massive entity that Todd Howard had to manage on multiple fronts. Todd Howard could actually get.
Is he gonna do the quote of the guy who said once he was in the elevator with someone, or was it not an elevator? Whatever. He was in the elevator and someone asked, "Oh, are you new here?" And his answer was, "No, I'm like fucking one of the big dudes. What the fuck, motherfucker?" And then he understood that, oh, we're not a small company. Is he gonna quote that one?
His hands dirty and go hands-on with the key development aspects of making games. But by the time Starfield shipped in 2023, Coleman described the studio as
It's been literally 6 years since the disaster of Starfield. Not 6, but 3.
it basically being 4 remote studios all working together on a game. When you get to that size, you can't have people just popping into Todd Howard's office to chat about a design point. He's not having lunch with everybody. It's very different when it's 400 people, 4 studios, big business, and Microsoft is now getting involved. Once upon a time, developers could just come to Todd Howard and be like, hey, should we do this or should we do that? And they could get a direct answer. But now there's like layers of red tape and management that developers have to deal with. They can't just go up to Todd Howard, who is now up on this pedestal, and just directly be like, hey, what should we do here? Bethesda Game Studios has become a lot more corporate, a lot more hierarchical, just by the nature of running a big business that Bethesda Game Studios has now become. But with that comes breakdown in communications, with Kuhlman talking about Starfield's development and how teams didn't understand what they were supposed to be doing a lot of times. Here's a direct quote from him where he said that there would be people talking to the leads in one studio and getting an answer, and people talking to the leads in the other studio and getting maybe a different answer.
No
So
shit.
you've got different managers with different ideas or different takes on questions. And so people are just like, we don't know what to do. We don't have like one visionary who's leading the charge. We have layers of management all with like different ideas and different things to say. And so it just became a lot more difficult to manage communication, whereas once upon a time,
It is so wild that there used to be a time in gaming when, this. And by the way, it's still there, but it's forgotten and effectively just put on the altar to the corporate overlordism. And that is the fact that there used to be studios that made massive games, and yet they made them with 100 people or 200 people. And nowadays, we get worse, smaller games with literally 2,000 people. Diablo 4 was made by literally 10,000 people, roughly. There's 10,000 people in the credits. 10,000 people contributed Diablo 4. How many people contributed to Diablo 2? I don't exactly remember, but I think it's not 10,000. And I think Diablo 2 was better for that. Now, granted, Diablo 4 did have more shit in it. True. Which I honestly don't remember at this point because it's just so fucking bad and unmemorable. Which is, I'm not even joking, by the way. That's actually true. I have trouble remembering the story because it's just so stupid and bad and useless. But at the end of the day, one game is a lot better than the other. And the new one's not winning out with the 10,000 people. That time is not gone. That time we could reclaim it. But now everything has been corporatized. Now everything has been streamlined to the, every logo is now just the first letter of the name, and that's your logo because everything needs to be dull and shit.
everyone was kind of in the same room, bouncing ideas off of each other, including Todd Howard. The way Coleman frames Todd Howard's present circumstances is that Todd's a very good project lead, and fundamentally, I think he's a designer at heart, and he's good at it, obviously, if you look back at the games. Over time, though, as he got busier and every part of this larger and larger organization wanted him to do stuff for their project, he would get pulled away. Basically, Todd Howard became more of a manager rather than a hands-on developer, and so his creative input began to diminish, and it became more about Todd Howard running the business of Bethesda Game Studios and making certain key decisions that defined its direction, but just having less.
And again, considering this situation is happening when we're having this discussion, it's very interesting that we have we still get complete impossible duality of Todd Howard. And that is the fact that there are some ex-developers from Bethesda who are saying Todd Howard micromanages everything, but there are at the same time people who worked in higher positions who say that Todd Howard doesn't micromanage anything at all, and that's why the games are bad. Both of these cannot be true at the same time. Someone's an idiot, and I want to find out who it is. Now, I don't think Todd Howard micromanages everything. It would be strange, because he removed his name from Starfield. He legitimately just removed his name from Starfield, even though that was the magical space game that he wanted to make. Oh, it's raining outside. He wanted to make since he was a kid or something like that. The story of Starfield and Todd Howard is fucking wild if you don't know it. Too Long Didn't Read is the fact that Starfield is legitimately something he wanted to make since he was a kid. And it's really strange that you just remove your name from it. Because, I mean, he's not trying to fix it. He's not trying to make it better. He just removed his name. What needs to happen? What needs to happen go through your mind that you just do that to the thing you claim you wanted to do since pretty much you were a kid? That is so absolutely wild. But yeah, a lot of people are unhappy with Todd Howard. A lot of this blame is put on Todd Howard, which I feel honestly. I think Todd Howard needs to be fired. I do. But at the same time, I'm not going to blame everything on Todd Howard. There's still a meal at the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? But even other than that, I think Bethesda as a whole in general is just completely fucking dumpster diving garbage. So, it's a group effort, most likely, that fails not a single person. In any case, that was Younger Yayer, 10 out of 10. Bye!